Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, into the one and only Straight Facts Homie off-season edition. Yes, you thought you were done with us. I don't think so. Football is 365. My name is Mason Souza. There's Walter Sabina, John Lyons, and a fourth member, dare I say, the second annual appearance of the one and only, the play-by-play voice of the six-time champion New England Patriots, Bob Socci. It is a pleasure to have you on once again. Thanks for taking the time, Bob.
Mason, thanks for having me. It's great to be here for the second annual visit. Already looking forward to the third.
Absolutely love it. Thank you very much for that. Let's get right to it. Walter, what do you have for Bob, John, and then we'll go around the room here.
Yeah, Bob, instead of looking backwards, I want to look forward right to this draft. When we had you on last year, it was clear as day that the Patriots needed a quarterback, and they went and got that with the Mac Jones pick at 15. This year, a little bit different, pick 21, and there's a lot more directions they can go to, maybe multiple positions, cornerback, linebacker, maybe another playmaker on offense. You personally, what would you like to see the Patriots do with that number 21 pick? And whatever direction they go, is there a specific name that you would like to see the Patriots draft?
Yeah, Walter, I think there are really 3 or 4 directions they could go and take the best player available route and at the same time address a need. And you mentioned linebacker, certainly front 7. I think even another body inside on the defensive line. For example, if there's a wide-bodied nose tackle that they could utilize, and someone available at 21 that could come in and have an impact similar to that of Christian Barmore last year as a second-round pick from Alabama, then I think that would be a great choice. A cornerback, someone on the back end defensively or offensively, if they want to go that route. Certainly the wide receiver position is one that everybody's talking about, but I also think the left tackle position is one the Patriots need to address looking forward, with Isaiah Wynn, of course, scheduled to play in his 5th-year option, but being an annual question mark in terms of his reliability and availability, and obviously whether he plays in 2022 extensively for the Patriots or not, they're going to have to address that position with him or someone else by 2023.
Yeah, Bob, I'm glad you brought up left tackle because I think the offensive line is a sneaky big need for the Patriots with Isaiah Wynn in that final year. Trent Brown's a free agent. Shaq Mason has 2 years left on his deal, although he is an extension candidate. And the uncertainties with what are they going to do with Michael Onwenu, Ted Karras. But when you look at the Patriots' needs, and I know we've talked about several of them, the biggest thing I look at is corner and linebacker. And of those two, I lean corner personally, and what's the bigger need? But for you, say they go defensively in the first round, in the first 2 rounds, do you think they go for corner? Do you think they go for linebacker? Or do you think they actually go out and actually take a swing at a wide receiver?
John, I think this is going to be a cop-out on my part, but I think it's probably who's the position, what player on their board is ranked higher. If it's a linebacker, they're going to go that route. If it's a cornerback, they go that route. And I think when you look at those positions, there's a better likelihood that there's going to be a linebacker. Let's say they stay at 21 and don't trade back, which I think is a possibility in this draft because they have a limited number of selections, fewer than in recent drafts. They've traded away some of the 2022 picks the last couple of years. So I wouldn't be surprised if even at 21, they decide to trade back to try to acquire another pick in the second round. This is a depth draft, according to many of the experts, people that have studied it far more than I have. So I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to do that. But I think it really comes down to if there's a linebacker that is at 21 available who's higher on their board than a cornerback, that's the way they're going to go. And I think that's why, to me, they can do that in this particular case and still at the same time try to take care of a need through the draft. A lot of teams use that expression, best player available. And sometimes that means the best player on their board available. Sometimes it means the best player at their position of need who's available. I think for the Patriots, they typically, to me, at least that's the explanation we get, is that they go, whoever's higher on their board. And I think in this year's case, it's probably more likely that it's going to be a linebacker than a cornerback.
He is Bob Socci, voice of the New England Patriots. Find him on Twitter at Bob Socci, Socci, on Straight Facts Homie here. Bob, I wanted to ask specifically, like, breaking down the fourth wall, take us into the broadcast booth. Did you take anything, obviously, a year back from the quote unquote COVID year without any fans in 2020? Is there anything specifically that you enjoyed most of having fans back? Was there anything that you took for granted, what you didn't have in 2020?
Yeah, Mason, a lot of it. I think number one, just being at the road games rather than calling them off television monitors at home, traveling with the team and calling games the way that they're meant to be called, with broadcasters there in the booth. And that's not meant necessarily as commentary on what some of the outlets are doing locally with regards to their broadcast properties. And, hockey, for example. That's part of it. But also, as you mentioned, the fans at Gillette Stadium, as opposed to going to an empty Gillette Stadium in 2020 and calling games. And I don't want to say that I took it for granted, but I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have prior to the COVID experience in 2020, because there is nothing like the energy of a stadium coming to life. And then in those exciting moments, and especially in those big game moments. Now, the Patriots didn't fare very well at home for the most part this year, especially early, but they played a lot of thrilling contests against marquee opponents, the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, as two examples. And the excitement, the energy at Gillette Stadium for games like that, and even later in the year when they were ready to entertain the Bills in a crucial showdown. And although it didn't turn out well for the Pats in Week 16, nonetheless, going into that game and the sense of the importance of that game at Gillette Stadium, and fans, being present and feeding off their energy, there is nothing like that when you call a game, that experience. And to me, that is something that, again, I hope I didn't take for granted in the past, but I certainly probably didn't appreciate it as much as I should have, and realized that because of the 2020 experience.
Yeah, with those fans back, I think they showed a lot of support for our first round pick, Mac Jones. Yeah. Being able to watch him this year and kind of how he developed throughout his rookie year, what would you give for a grade for Mac Jones, and kind of what do you look forward to heading into year 2 of the Mac Jones era?
Yeah, I think it's a very promising situation right now for the Patriots. And I think that's the biggest thing at the end of 2021 is that they didn't have the same question that existed a year ago. Who's going to be the quarterback going forward? I think they found their answer. That's not to say that Mac Jones is going to be a star. That's not to say that Mac Jones is bound for Canton. But I do believe that Mac Jones is the Patriots quarterback going forward for the foreseeable future. And he is someone that I believe has a higher ceiling than I think some people anticipated. Now, did he hit the rookie wall toward the end of last year? Perhaps. I think there's a lot of evidence that in a way he did. But I also think that Mac showed a lot of growth, even in some of those down moments toward the end of the year. And I think when you look at the playoff performance, for example, he was one of the bright spots to me in an otherwise dismal outing for the Patriots. He continued to compete. And I saw some growth in his game in terms of a little more athleticism and leadership. And he talked about that after the Bills loss in the playoffs, that he's got to come back next year and exert himself. And we've already seen him in the early offseason. There's a picture going around on social media of him with Tom House, and he's been heard, of course, having made the rounds during the Super Bowl week about talking about his body, nutrition, being in better shape next year. And I think that he's a kid who's extremely smart, and he has a lot of the intangibles. But I also think that he has a lot of skills that are necessary to be a good quarterback, if not a great quarterback. And I think he could become that. Again, not to say that he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, not to say that he's going to be a top 5 quarterback. But I think that, when people say accuracy, intelligence, reading a defense, understanding leadership, those are intangibles. I also say those are skills. Those are skills that not every gifted quarterback has when you talk about guys with physical skills, physical talents. And I think that, for Mac Jones, he's not a statue. He's a better athlete. I think they can incorporate some movement in his game next year going forward. I think a lot of it depends on the people that surround him, and that means not only on the field but on the sideline. and how the Patriots are going to manage the offense with Josh McDaniels' departure and with Joe Judge and Matt Patricia reportedly being more involved in the offense this year. But to your question about a grade, I'd say to me as a rookie, and if you put it on a grading scale based on being a rookie, I don't want to say it's an A plus or an A maybe, but I think it's a B plus. Now, compared to veteran quarterbacks, maybe it's a solid B. But I think in the young man they have right now going into a second season, I think the Patriots have a guy that is certainly the right person for the job at this point in time.
And Bob, one of the biggest questions to me is the coaching staff around Mac Jones on offense. Now, Josh McDaniels was the offensive coordinator in New England for 14 years. 13 of those years, they were in the top 10 in points per game, including last year, they were 6th with Mac Jones. Now, not only is he gone, but Nick Lombardi's gone, Cameron Brasillo's gone, Ivan Fears is likely to retire. So they've brought in Joe Judge. They've moved Matt Patricia over. They do have Troy Brown there, and Nick Caley's still probably going to be a strong voice. But I want to get your overall thoughts on this revamped offensive coaching staff, if you will. Do you think it's going to benefit Mac Jones and really help his growth going forward, or do you foresee some growing pains, especially early in the season next year?
Well, John, I think there's some concern on my part, and certainly, from what I've seen and read anecdotally, as well, I heard from some fans, it's a cause for concern because we just don't know. Now, Joe Judge was a quarterback in college, but we know at the NFL level, he's coached special teams and very briefly was a wide receivers coach as well for the Patriots. And I don't think the performance of the Giants offense, not that it was on him as the head coach, obviously Jason Garrett and he were not on the same page over the course of their season plus together, but that didn't inspire a lot of confidence in terms of him being involved in a greater way with the Patriots offense. Matt Patricia did start as an assistant to Dante Scarnecchia on the offensive line before shifting over to defense. But I think you look at his track record, he's thought of as a defensive guy. It's not only the departures you mentioned of Josh McDaniels, but it's a guy like Mick Lombardi, who was very involved in the red zone planning. And that's after a coach like Chad O'Shea left after his long tenure with the Patriots, as someone who seemingly was the next in line behind Josh. And that was after Brian Daboll left and became, obviously a great mentor to Josh Allen and is now the head coach of the New York Giants because of his performance as the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. So if you go back just in the last 6 or 7 years and you consider what the Patriots have lost on the coaching staff, really on both sides of the ball. But I think, when we're talking about offense right now with Daboll and O'Shea, Lombardi, McDaniels, that is a significant brain drain. And I didn't even mention Dante Scarnecchia, and you've pointed out that Ivan Fears is seemingly headed for retirement sooner rather than later, perhaps as soon as this offseason. I think that's the expectation. Perhaps there's a possibility that he would stick around for another year because of some of the losses we've discussed. But that's significant. And I think when you're talking about it, the situation even with Nick Caley as a tight ends coach, often the natural progression is another position, then you coach quarterbacks. Then you become the offensive coordinator and play caller. I think a lot of people anticipated maybe that Nick would step up from that tight ends role and have a greater say. But right now it's a large unknown for this team exactly how they're going to shape their offensive game plan and who on Sundays will be calling plays and who's going to be sitting down with Mac on the bench with the Surface tablet or the Polaroids and counseling him between series, because Josh, as we could see, every game was there on the bench right next to Mac as soon as the series ended. And I think Josh is a guy that, although he was subject to a lot of criticism at times, was as good as, if not better, than any other play caller in the league.
And to follow up on that, we are Straight Facts Home. We're speaking with Bob Socci, voice of the New England Patriots. Last one for me, Walter and John, if you guys have a final one, please do. And we'll get Bob Socci on that. To follow up on the coaching departure, more specifically, Josh McDaniels, we were actually speaking with one Mike Felger, actually, a month ago or so, about the McDaniels move. This was fresh off his press conference with the Raiders, his introductory press conference. Why now? Why in your mind do you think Josh McDaniels decided to, okay, now it's the time to go, when it seemed like I don't know, like from an outsider looking in, it seemed like he was the next one. He was the heir to the head coach of the New England Patriots. In comes Matt Patricia, in comes Joe Judge, in comes guys like this. And it seems like, I don't know if Josh McDaniels was like, all right, it's time to take what's given right now in the Raiders' opportunity, or do I hang on to it and hold this out with the New England Patriots? It seemed like he was cozy in his position. Obviously, one of the best offensive coordinators in the league. I'm sure he gets paid like one of the top offensive coordinators in the league. But I'm just curious. It's still a question mark why he decided to make this move. Do you find it peculiar at all, or was it just time for Josh McDaniels to give head coaching another chance?
Well, Mason, I think there's a number of possibilities, and I do think that you raise some very interesting points, and it may be more than simply the allure of the Raiders job, but let's start with the enticement from Las Vegas. Number one, he had the opportunity to go to work alongside Dave Ziegler. They've been close since their college days at John Carroll. Of course, Josh was with the Broncos, brought Dave into that organization. They've been alongside in Foxborough. They have a great working relationship that's going to be a partnership in terms of building the roster the way they want it crafted out in Las Vegas. Stadium situation, the resources there, fantastic in every way. You have an owner in Mark Davis who certainly is subject to a lot of ridicule, particularly on our beloved flagship station of the Pats 98.5, the Sports Hub. But he's also someone who loves football and is going to let his football people do what they're supposed to do and stay out of their way. And so I think for Josh, when you look at the ownership situation, and especially you compare it to, for example, Indianapolis, where he walked away from the altar at the 11th hour, I think it's a better situation in a lot of respects. He goes in and he has Derek Carr. Maybe he wants to move on from him in the near future, but nonetheless, that's not a bad place to start. It's certainly a team that has talent. They were in the playoffs. They were very competitive in that playoff game. And frankly, you can make a case that they should have beaten the Bengals in the wild card round. So I think it's a good situation there on a number of levels for Josh. Quality of everything about the Raiders organization, including, frankly, if you want nice weather, you want to get out of the New England winter, it's not bad going out to Las Vegas. But I also think, you raised some interesting points about the Patriots and the timing of it. I have my own personal thoughts about, the Patriots' future. And I think there's so much uncertainty how much longer Bill Belichick will coach this team. We're talking about the situation of the offensive staff. How's that going to affect, them, considering that they've got some ground to make up between themselves and now the team that is back-to-back champion in the AFC East and will probably go into next season as the favorite to win the AFC overall, the Buffalo Bills. And, I look at the Pats situation with Bill Belichick. He's up there now, 70 years old. How much longer will he be coaching? Gerard Mayo is a guy that I think very highly of. After only a few years as a coach, he's had a couple of head coaching opportunities. Would he be the next guy in line? Did Josh McDaniels have that sense? Maybe just Josh was concerned as well. But the Patriots had gone through 7-9 last year. There were all these other coaches that were coming up as the up-and-comers from that McVay-Shanahan pipeline. Maybe if he passed this opportunity by, there wouldn't be another one, particularly if the Patriots – next year, after 7-9 and 10-6 with a wild card route at the hands of the Bills, go through another season similar to the one that just passed. Would there be an opportunity on the other side of that? So I think, for a number of reasons, Josh McDaniels was swayed to go to Las Vegas, but I don't think you can, discount that the top reason was the situation working alongside Dave Ziegler with an organization like the Raiders.
And there you go. In the interest of time, I think that was it. That was very detailed, very interesting. Like you said, you detailed it, and it could be a variety of different reasons for Josh McDaniels. And obviously, a little mystery on the Bill Belichick coaching front with all his assistant coaches underneath him, and the mass exodus that you illustrated earlier. He is Bob Socci, voice of the New England Patriots. Find him on Twitter at Bob Socci, SOCCI, giving hot football takes all day, all night, 24/7. Bob, thank you very much for joining us. This was awesome.
Mason, Walter, John, great to be with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it. We'll move right on. Straight facts on me.